Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Factory. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz, and on the factory floor, I'm thrilled to have Robert Reif.
Hello, thanks for having me, Mookie.
It is my pleasure. You are the author of Frontier One. You're having a promo.
Yes, starting on today, November 18th, we're going to the 20th. We're giving away Frontier 1 for free as an audiobook on Kindle.
Outstanding. And I see you got a bit of a Beauty and the Beast theme going there, and we'll talk in detail about the book itself. If you're on video, we're seeing the video. If you're on audio, we've got what looks like Conan with an exploring female.
Yeah, so we have the Conan-looking fellow, that's Charlie. And
Okay.
he's born on this jungle planet called Undula. It's a little bit like Venus. It's covered in clouds. And he grew up there in the jungle, isolated, a bit like Tarzan. And, on a world covered by clouds, when you look up, you don't see any stars. You don't know about the other planets. So he kind of just believes he lives on this flat plane. And one day, this astro-zoologist, Talina Day, she arrives with her starship expedition to this planet and discovers Charlie. And she finds out how little he knows about the universe and brings him above the clouds of Undula to show him the stars and the planets and just how much more expansive the universe actually is than he ever believed. So the story is then their adventure of planet hopping across these 12 worlds, which is a star system that they live in, as introduced in the map here.
Outstanding. You got your own map, you got your own setup. What inspired this harrowing tale? Seems to have elements of some familiar tropes, but you're giving it your own spin. How'd you get the idea?
Lots of different science fiction stories that I love. Lots of just stories in general. I've always been a storyteller, and it's that story, as all storytellers, it's just a story that I was itching to tell that combines all the elements of the things that I love to tell, to speak a truth of people, of the universe, and some connecting themes that bring us all together.
Who did the cover for you?
That was a friend from Chicago, Jesus. He did the cover art fully designed by hand, or well, he did it on the computer.
But. Nice, but zero AI. You had Jesus from Chicago stepping up. That's
right.
Great.
I kind of did the outlines for it, and I tried putting it through AI, but it doesn't understand.
Yeah, and it's kind of an old school cover too. It goes back to it looks a bit like the sci-fi pulp novels of old. So it's a little unrefined, but that makes it kind of indie and fresh.
Yeah, it's a style that I really love. That kind of, an old school swashbuckling feel. I love like 50s Arthur C. Clarke feel. And the art of Chesley Bonestell, like those paintings just evoke such a sense of optimism and adventure of like what the future could be, and I kind of wanted to capture it in the cover.
Great. And writing a sci-fi novel, how did that become your focus? We live in a super digital, multimedia, now AI crazed world, and a novel is, in a sense, older school. It's a commitment. Less people are reading, although the audience is still there and vibrant. A lot of listeners now love classic sci-fi. They love reading sci-fi.
Yeah, I'm one of those readers. I've always loved reading classic sci-fi, and so it's something that I knew I could do, but I've always loved movies. That was my original love, and I would originally write movies. I've made a couple short science fiction movies while I was in college. But to make a kind of a longer one that feels kind of real, that feels grounded, is obviously much more difficult. The ones that I made were a little bit corny. They looked like classic Star Trek, where the sets are just propped up by wood. So I wanted to originally start this as a movie, but I didn't know how this story could kind of work into that framework of 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So I just said, you know what, no restrictions. I'm just going to write this story as it appears in my head. And then I realized, oh, that's just what a book is. You're able to have description that's outside of what you can see, outside of what you can hear. And I've read enough books, and when I was really young, that's what I liked doing, because when I was like 10, I didn't know what a screenplay even really was, so I would write things as books. And it's really something that anyone can, understand. It's just, it's like a screenplay. You kind of have to know a little bit about how it's going to be put together to look in the end. That's with the book, you just get the hallucination in your head based on what's written.
And you have full control. So you could bring your own imagination to life. There's no one to appease on the set. You're not collaborating. And the only rules of the game are learning how to write a good book.
Yes. You got to appease the publisher, though.
Yes. But you self-publish, though. Is this right? You're an indie author.
There were some requirements that they wanted, though, in our deal that we had.
Okay. All right. Good for you. And then it sounds like you started THX 1138 George Lucas style with your own college sci-fi movies. And you've contemplated, obviously writing for the screen, but you've got full control writing a book. And have you thought about graphic novel extensions and repurposing that way? Maybe your buddy Jesus in Chicago can help you do some lifting there too.
I don't know if my graphic novel literacy is up to snuff. I just haven't read too many. I've read a lot of Star Wars comics when I was younger.
You're interesting to me because I'm a Gen Xer, and you smack me as just a couple years younger than I am, and you're a digital native, and you grew up in this maelstrom of digital tech, screens, and you're writing a book, and the idea of a graphic novel isn't natural to you. You're more on the page, which again just strikes me as interesting. It's kind of like you're a collector of vinyl records.
Yeah. You want me to? I can show you my collection right over here.
You actually do have vinyl records?
Yeah. They're
all right. See, this is then in character completely. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, my friend of mine, she recently just described me as a Gen Xer a millennial in a Gen Xer's body.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. I kind of sense that from the beginning. And again, I'm obviously a huge fan of science fiction. I'm hosting the Science Fiction and Fantasy podcast here. But I've just sensed too that folks who grow up in digital tend to downplay the written word and aren't that into good old school novel writing. And you have written a good old school novel with an old school pulp kind of cover. And even your theme is classic. And yeah.
There's just a feeling for it that makes me feel very connected with, just with the earth, with nature, with how people, something raw that's within people.
And this idea of being kind of a throwback is compelling. And you mentioned, obviously, in addition to the science fiction, you've got some science interests. Would you consider yourself a science geek or hobbyist? Or
hobbyist at most. It's not. I don't think I'll ever actually work in any STEM field, but I definitely like reading Brian Greene books, Lawrence Krauss books, just to kind of understand here's how things work. I think that a lot of people kind of dismiss that these days, and it's not magic. You can figure out how these things work, and then you're a wizard if you figure that out.
What is the Heinlein line that if it reaches a certain level of sophistication, it's no different from magic, and magic is basically just science before we were able to understand it.
Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke said,
Oh, okay.
science,
Yeah.
magic
Yeah.
is just science we don't understand yet.
I think Heinlein had a variation. This is one of those quotes that gets requoted, but it's done so because it's so true. So in your book, Frontier One, how do you look at science? There in science fiction, we've got this whole spectrum. And on one extreme, let's call it a 10, it's hard science fiction. Andy Weir is on the borderline of hard science fiction because he's an engineer. He actually
Yeah.
wrote The Martian in installments on his blog, and he had real engineers within the community chiming in and helping him with the math and making sure that he was accurate. And there's a real strong obsession in not only world building, but the world being accurate to the precision that we understand science in the world right now. And then I would put as a 0 Star Wars, because you got artificial gravity and you got sound in space and basically faster than light travel. And George Lucas basically didn't care about the science and just went for it as a backdrop for a story. So where's Frontier One in 0 to 10 in how you look at the universe that you've created?
Well, it's closer to the world of Star Wars in the sense that there's no Earth, there's not, the connection to our today's society is far off.
Yeah, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, this is very far from where we are now. And I liken it to The Expanse, or like Leviathan Wakes, in the sense where it's, one colonized, one star system.
Right.
Instead of being the star system we're from, it's a entirely new one. And then on top of that,
The Expanse, though, is Earth, is very much Earth future. So
yes, but it's or at least for the first book and the first couple seasons of the show, it's contained to that one star system.
Oh, I see what you mean. So it's when one system, you're not gallivanting across the galaxy.
Yeah, that's too big for me. I can't even comprehend it.
Okay, so it's one system, but it's in a Star Wars kind of universe where it's got nothing to do with Earth, with humans.
But you can't go faster than light. If you're going to be walking on your feet in space, you're going to be in a centrifuge.
Okay, all right. So you're kind of honoring the basic principles of science, but you're not obsessing over them. You're not spending several pages talking about artificial gravity through a centrifugal force from a spinning spaceship, like Andy Weir does in his newer book. So you just basically let it happen. You make these tacit assumptions, and I'm assuming then that you're more character driven.
Yes.
So it's about Tarzan on his planet of clouds. And then you've got the visitor who swoops him up, takes him to her world. And then I'm assuming it's the interplay between these characters.
Yeah, they then end up going on a further adventure because this man, Charlie, who was born outside of society, he has a connection with nature, the connection with the whole universe that people like you or I, who are kind of too linked up, don't really understand. And he helps to, he can feel the changes of the planets, and he discovers this rogue planet that's coming into the 12 Worlds, their star system. And it's a stranger planet than they've ever thought, and it sends out a transmission which hints at life. So they then go on an expedition to discover what this distant traveler is.
Spoiler alert.
It's chapter 2.
All right. That's pretty good. And then in terms of their relationship, would you consider it a science fiction romance in any way? Do you have some chemistry going on here?
Yeah, there's some romance. It's I guess a bit of a modern romance, not too much like they butt heads at first. He's in love with her. He hasn't met a woman before, and she's kind of, at first she's interested, sees him as, something kind of new, but she's very work oriented, and she doesn't. Talina is not someone who wants to be held down by anyone. That's why she's kind of an astronaut. She has this need to explore. She doesn't want to settle anywhere.
All right. And were you inspired by current events, our crazy culture, our politics? Even though it's in a galaxy far, far away, did you feel that you were channeling any of your life, any of our history now? Does it come out on the page? Did you consciously want to do that, or did you want it to just be pure escapist science fiction?
There are modern relevant things in this, not as much political as I think like planetary in terms of respecting the environment, environmentalism messages, in ways in which people have kind of lost touch and connection. There's a new book I'm working on that's much more politically inspired and modern history inspired, so to say.
Okay, so mild influences get in there, and
Yeah, there's a lot of I take a lot from cultures, places that I've been, people that I've met, rather than kind of broader happenings, and it's much more personal experience inspired.
tell us about your personal experiences. Because there's the writer, there's their book. Sometimes they're more overtly connected, sometimes not. Give our listeners and viewers a hint as to Robert. What have you been up to? What led you to this moment of actually being a published science fiction author? And connect the dots for us.
Well, I grew up in a suburb outside of New York City, and I was kind of sheltered there until like college. And I feel like that was when I kind of, actually started growing up and, getting into science and just how things work, how things like undeniably work. And I worked in TV, and I've done lots of traveling. I've been to 6 of the 7 continents.
That's 3 more than me. I gotta catch up.
I never really saw myself as like a rambling man when I was in my teen years, but like I just love being on the road, not knowing where I'm going to sleep that night, and just finding a way that kind of reveals itself. It's living on the frontier. It's like modern exploration, kind of. And I've delved into kind of lots of cultures that were very foreign to me. And when something kind of seems very different, I guess like traveling through Latin America, you just have to spend 5 minutes with something, and then you find out it's not as strange. It's actually the differences are beautiful that you find anywhere in the world. That's kind of the beauty of our variety.
So in ways you've been exploring the galaxy of the human condition.
Yes.
And it sounds like being cloistered in a New York suburb, getting out, finding that there's a big wide world, and then going for it, instilled in you this sense of adventure, and also that cultures and people that might seem alien are actually way more familiar than we think.
Yeah, everyone's just like the same representation of who you are. Like, they've just had different experiences, but everyone really just is. I think everyone does have a good heart at the end. Most everyone just wants to hang out and have a good time, watch their children be safe.
Yeah, I think that that's categorically true. It's just sad that so many things get in the way of that.
Yeah, we create like our own. All anger is like self-created. Like people just come up with stuff to make them angry.
Especially now with social media.
Oh my God, yeah. I fall for it all the time still.
And especially when you throw in limited resources and the perception of limited resources and a zero-sum game and objectives being mutually exclusive, then things get ugly fast. And especially when most of us easily get manipulated by folks who want us to be manipulated, and then things get pretty out of hand. So it ends up with the mess we're kind of in.
Yeah, I really kind of wish that people could just take 5 minutes to, when you see something in like the news or social media, just don't react. Just like, figure out, does this matter to me? Is this real or not? And I don't know, we just live in such a reactionary time where I feel like people are celebrating like just anti-intellectualism.
Yeah, truth no longer exists, right? It's just manipulation by some power. And then that opens up the door.
It's so easy to fall for that feeling rather than, taking a couple minutes to figure something out for yourself.
Science fiction has been an outlet for a lot of this. I mean, just like you say, most people are more or less the same with the same wants and needs. From generation to generation, people have more or less been similar as well. So it's like deja vu all over again, all the problems that we have for generations prior to us. And historically, science fiction of all genres, I think, has been an escapist outlet on the one hand, and a projection of our hopes and desires on the other. So even if we look at the classic shows like Star Trek, the original series, I used to run home after school every day to see reruns of the original Star Trek on the local Chicago TV show. And even when I was too young to really understand what the hell exactly was going on, the feeling of some kind of message came through to me. And whether it was the prime directive, we should just let people be, whether they're aliens or our own, or whether we highlight problems that humanity has, whether it's racism or plutocracy, any kind of injustice. And science fiction's been a great vehicle for expressing some of that and letting it all out. Do you think your book hits home some of this? You've got some escapist stuff, you got a little bit of romancing, you've got unexplored worlds.
Yeah, I wanted it to be like the classic Star Trek's kind of, and just its optimism, where there's not, it's not people with laser guns trying to kill each other. They're trying to solve problems. Occasionally someone will come up and be threatening, but at the end of the day, it's like, Kirk doesn't kill the Gorn. He tries to save that the Klingon that killed his son.
That's right. The next generation got even more emo than the traditional one, and there's a big battle among Star Trek fans as to which one's better, the classic old series or whether next
You're an
generation.
original series guy?
Yeah, I'm maybe as a product of my youth or my own biases, I always thought the original series was where it's at, and that the new series got a little too preachy and a little bit too meta. But it obviously had some classic shows, and it's had all of these spin-offs. And it all goes back to Forbidden Planet. Have you ever seen Forbidden Planet? It had everything. Yes, Leslie Nielsen.
Robbie the robot, the id creature.
The naked gun guy was a heartthrob teen idol back in the late 50s.
Yeah.
And it was a huge investment on a part of the studio. It was a mega movie. And when you see Forbidden Planet now through the lens of Star Trek, Star Wars, even The Expanse and the new TV shows, you're kind of like, they stole everything. You had the captain and his crew. You had the bridge of a starship. You had the kind of quirky android. You had the undiscovered kind of mysterious planet where there was a secret alien technology beneath the surface. And you had all of these science fiction tropes that had been part of the the part and parcel of science fiction pulp for decades. And they brought it to life in this brilliant movie that flopped. The movie bombed. They didn't know what to do with it when it came out. But now when we look back on it, it's like, wow, that's the great granddaddy of science fiction since then. And you actually lose a little respect for George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Gene Roddenberry because so much of it's already there.
They're all inspired by these things, especially in Star Wars. It's just a combination of
everything, like Harry Potter, Dungeons and Dragons, and all the other fantasy movies of the time. But the reason I bring it up within the context of our conversation is that your spirit embodies a lot of that early science fiction of exploration, of hope. You don't hesitate and get a little campy, with your Tarzan guy.
We don't know what it's actually going to be to like actually try to be like, oh, this is what it's going to be like. You don't want to do that. You want to have some fun with it. And Forbidden Planet, it's just such a awesome old school kind of movie.
Yeah. And again, your spirit captures that. It's kind of retro futuro, right? It goes backward and forward at the same time. And it's from the 50s, pretty much the Eisenhower years, like before the shit really hit the fan, really with, Kennedy and the assassination and the arms race, Vietnam. It's kind of the golden age. And we all miss that sense of those times, right? Where people seem to be more civil to each other. At least the perception of it.
That story also does feel like so much like you could have taken one of those old school novels and made it into that. And that's also what I love about the classic Star Treks. Each one is it's like a sci-fi short story that you can make into an episode, like something that could have been from a pulp magazine. And
absolutely. And some science fiction writers wrote the scripts. Harlan Ellison. Are you familiar with Harlan
Ellison?
Ellison?
Forever.
Yeah. And that's one of the best old school Star Trek episodes with the alternate Earth and preventing World War II.
Yeah. Those moral dilemmas are always so great of like, I gotta let her go. I gotta, I've fallen in love with this woman, but I need to let her die so that Hitler doesn't get the atomic bomb. Yeah.
What a great idea, right?
Did you see any of the USS Callister episodes of
Black Mirror? Yeah, the Black Mirror stuff.
Yeah. Did you see the new one?
No, I saw the first bit of it and then I got distracted. Does it hold up compared to the first one?
I really enjoyed it.
You liked it? All right, I will check it out based on your reference, because the first one was brilliant and it was so evocative of the spirit of Black Mirror, because it corrupted the beauty of what we're talking about. And I think that's one of the themes of Black Mirror is they go to the absolute worst case scenario of our tools and technology and our possible futures. Like they take a what if and they extrapolate into disaster. And that, that guy's obsession with the old school Star Trek movies, putting himself into a virtual reality world where he's not only the captain of the ship, but he's the master of the reality that he's created. And then he literally steals the virtual constructs of his own employees and makes them his slaves. It's wild. It's
such an awesome episode. I love that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So who are the bad guys in your book, or where does the tension come from? You got Tarzan, you got this space Jane, then you got a rogue planet comes in, and then they go on an adventure together. Yeah. And that's the makings of a good read right there. But what kind of stuff do you throw in their face? And is there a bad guy? Do you have the evil corporation trope? Do you have the mysterious alien trope? What's the obstacle that they need to overcome without revealing too much?
Yeah. So particularly in the first chapter, it starts off. I wanted to start off like a classic Star Trek episode where you Starship arrives, or like Forbidden Planet, Starship arrives at new planet. We go down, and there's some conflict going on, and this conflict going on is that the native people are being attacked by these giant ants because they're on a planet with heightened oxygen, so all life is like huge. All life that's evolved there is huge. So there are these giant ants that they used to live in peace with that are now attacking the local human colonists, and so they're in a war. And the Talina, as an astro-zoologist, she's come to kind of figure out, okay, what has happened to disrupt the environment so as to have these creatures attack the colonists. And she finds that this is the first chapter, so I'll say she defines that it's Charlie who has been living among the
This is your teaser for listeners and viewers, right?
Yes. And so Charlie has no knowledge of, the greater universe. He thinks that he just lives on this kind of flat plane of existence. And, it's him. He has these preset beliefs that he kind of then needs to, grow from, realize that what he knows isn't all that there is. It's like it's like someone leaving Plato's cave. And the conflicts from there on out are very interpersonal among the crew. Charlie, he desires Talina, but Talina is pushing him away because the conflict comes from character decisions, and it's all I don't want to get too deep to the end because they get to this planet that they're going to, and people just have their own interests, and that gets in the way. So I don't think of any character as the bad guy. There's definitely one who becomes the biggest obstacle by the end, and it's just because he's encountering something he can't comprehend.
So it sounds like it's entirely character driven, which is music to my ears, because just like we laid out a spectrum from 0 Star Wars to 10 Andy Weir Martian, there's 0, which is writers who are obsessed with world building in science fiction. They go on and on about the planet, about the universe. They make up languages like Klingon or whatever. And then you spend half your time trying to figure out what the hell they're saying to each other because it's in some alien language. And most of the narration has to do with describing the world rather than getting the reader enmeshed in an organic drama between real people with real goals struggling against actual obstacles, right?
Yes, that's what's really
So it
most
sounds
interesting.
like you avoided a lot of the classic science fiction mistakes that a lot of writers make, especially out of the gate, which is focusing on world creation above all else. And you take the opposite road, which is you're all about the characters.
Yeah, there's still that world there that they inhabit, which is kind of how it started.
Sure, you need a setting, but it sounds like your action is driven by the interpersonal play between the characters and not talking about, solar flares or creatures walking on a neutron star or time warps or,
But there is, they do go to this Saturn-like planet called Cisco, like this ringed gas giant. And 2 of the moons, Cryos and Idris, they're like locked in a Cold War. So at like halfway, they have to make their way through this inter-moon conflict. That's like they have a Cuban Missile Crisis in space situation.
That's cool. So how do you relate your own interests? So seems like you're into space, you're into science. How do you feel about where we're at now? Because you're growing up in a slightly different circumstance. Like, again, I'm the Gen X dude. And I remember one of my earliest memories is sitting in front of a black and white TV and waiting for one of the Apollo landers to take off again so the crew can go in orbit. And I
Yeah.
remember sitting there as a kid. I was kind of like Eric Cartman from South Park. I was kind of fat and I couldn't shut the hell up. And I was really impatient because they had the camera set up on the surface of the moon, and it was a live broadcast about, the top blasting off to go back into orbit to bring the astronauts back. And I'm like, come on already.
Yeah. Oh my, for
And
a
then
kid
I
that must be.
finally it went, and then it popped like a cork from a champagne bottle. It was like,
Yeah.
woo. And I remember sitting there on my fat ass. Is like, I must have been like, how old? Like 6 years old. I was like, that was it.
Right.
and and frankly, that's how the American public felt about the Apollo missions after a while. So there was no bigger news than when Armstrong first set foot on the moon, July of 1969.
Yeah. But then ratings dipped for Apollo 12.
Immediately. And then it came back up for ill-fated Apollo 13. And the biggest news was that they couldn't make it, not that they made it.
Yeah.
And each launch cost a lot of money, and it was an entire infrastructure. And after we beat the Soviets to get on the moon, the funding started to dry, because the real reason we went wasn't for the sake of science and the sake of humanity and exploration to boldly go,
Just to prove
but
our
it
missiles
was
could blow you up before yours do.
yeah, we have the technology to get on the moon. We can therefore kill you. So that's why we did this. It was pure competition with another perceived superpower and enemy.
But I think it kind of poetically turns into something historically beautiful, where it's like a race to see who could blow up the other first results in the exploration of a new world. Ultimately, together, by the time you get to the Apollo-Soyuz and the International Space Station.
And that was a great expression of détente. The Soyuz. We actually rendezvoused with Russians in orbit, and that was a sign of reconciliation, or at least peace. That was a big deal too. But interest waned. And if you ask almost anyone, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how many dudes actually walked on the moon as a
12.
part of trivia?
12. It was Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Pete Conrad, Alan Bean, Alan Shepard, Edgar Mitchell, David Scott, John Young, Charlie Duke, Gene Cernan, and Harrison Schmitt.
Awesome, good for you. But I would say most folks have no idea that only a dozen actually walked on the moon.
Yeah, well, people focus so much on like just the first one as the moon landing. It's like, no, there were moon landings.
Right. And they did amazing stuff by Apollo 6 and Apollo 17 with the rover. They took like a 4-hour trip in the rover. They went miles away from the module.
Yeah, I read a book about the rover, called "Across the Airless Wilds," and it just delves into the engineering of it and how incredible it was to have had that. Like, you cover a distance, because for 11, 12, and 14, they just walked around, but they pretty much covered a distance the size of Manhattan on 15, 16, 17.
Unbelievable, and the cojones it took. Think about that. The thing rolls over, the thing breaks down, and you're miles away, right? You've got limited oxygen, limited capabilities. It's Andy Weir Martian, only in 1971.
Yeah, what they would do is they'd first drive as far as they could, knowing they could walk back, and then they'd start collecting rocks as they headed back.
Right, just amazing stuff. And imagine the experience, the lived experience. You look up and the Earth is something like 40 times brighter than the full moon. So when you see it in the sky, it's this enormous blue orb, and the light is like the sunlight on Earth at dawn or dusk. It's incredible.
Stars, you can't see the stars with the camera, but when you're there, it's like like how the stars look on when you're in a desert or in the ocean on Earth, where it's just clear.
No atmosphere. There's no atmosphere. You see the entire galaxy and all of its beauty.
Yeah. So I really hope that more people are going to be able to see that within our lifetimes, and that's just going to become something regular. They moved up the launch for Artemis 2, which That hasn't happened yet. It's only been delayed so far. They finally brought it into like, they said it's gonna be like April of next year, 2026.
But doesn't Artemis kind of suck? I mean, it's a non-reusable rocket. It's literally $1 billion per launch just to get it up there, and then you throw the entire rocket into the garbage can. And this is post Falcon, post Starship, and now post Blue Origin, where they're all able to bring the boosters back.
It's definitely not the preferred way of travel, but I'd rather have them go than
it. I would love for us to go back. The roundabout reason I went on this tangent too is that I'm Eric Cartman sitting there eating my Twinkies, and I see this stuff, and then nothing as far as manned exploration goes. Low Earth orbit is bullshit, and then the space station is kind of a boondoggle, frankly, in its own way. The amount of time, energy, and money that went into the ISS. And the space shuttle was probably, this is just my humble opinion, the biggest mistake ever made as far as human tech goes related to space. It took 1 million signatures to launch a space shuttle. It had a failure rate of 2%, cataclysmic. 101 launches, 2 of them blew up. And it was, again, just, it was a payload system that was inordinately expensive.
Yeah, like a space truck.
A space truck that wasted tens of billions of dollars and literally 2-3 decades of opportunity when we could have done so many other things.
Yeah, I do think the shuttle really helped kind of establish a permanent presence in space, and we could definitely thank it for that. But it's not a modern piece of technology. I don't know if we're going to have many more space planes like that, so to say.
I mean, we might with more innovation, but where it's at is, I think Musk is right in terms of the big rockets capable of big payloads that are reusable. And he's proving that model, and it's being emulated now. Bezos just was able to do it 10 years after the fact, and probably after stealing a bunch of Elon's people to do it. And the privatization of space, I think, is a terrific development because NASA is notoriously inefficient and bureaucratic. And you just need to blow shit up in order to test it and make it happen. So we're at an exciting time, and right at the cusp of taking our birthright, which goes back to the prime directive of Star Trek and all the science fiction stuff, that space is ours. Let's go for it. And this argument that we're wasting time and money when we've got bigger problems on Earth begs the question that we've got bigger problems on Earth that space can ultimately help solve.
Yeah, I always feel very very egotistical, kind of narcissistic, thinking like this is what I care about, is like how well are we going to do in space, and not feeding people. But I am very hopeful of what our future will be like in space, and Elon keeps talking about going to Mars by like 2030 or something, and it just seems so impossible. But also, if you told someone in 1967, after the Apollo 1 fire, that within 2.5 years people would be on the moon, it would just be unbelievable. So when the actual advancements start happening, they could just spark up, and you don't know. It's just incredible how things can happen once the ball starts rolling.
How do you feel about Mars, though, while we're on the subject? Now, once again, my humble, bald-headed opinion from the middle-aged Eric Cartman here is that Mars is ridiculous. And in a nutshell, here's why. It is super far away, especially compared to the moon. The moon is about 250,000 miles away on average, right?
2-week trip versus 2 years.
Yeah, you're there in like 3-4 days. The Apollo guys, they hauled ass and they were there with that technology in 3-4 days. Mars is months away. Even if you get like ion propulsion and all these other models, it is really damn far. That's number one. Number two is you're out in space for months. And there's no way that you could be sufficiently shielded from all the nastiness that's in space. Months and months in the interplanetary void. You start seeing things, your brains get fried. It's just not realistic to me. And then let's say you can overcome that. Then you're on this rock, right, that hasn't seen running water probably in hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions. And then what? It's 120 below zero. The atmosphere is 2% of what it is here on Earth. And the gravity is about a third. Okay.
Well, it's to do it to
why
do it.
not? Just to end my little rant here, and Elon is not listening and he does not give a shit. But the only reason I think it's all about Mars is because we haven't been there yet. And it's akin to the moon, where you need that excitement about doing something new to warrant the expense and investment. The moon is right there. Imagine if we built nuclear reactors on the moon. There's no worry about affecting the environment because there's no environment.
No environment. It's a garbage dump.
And then imagine just the dish. You know how we have the James Webb telescope that's like blowing the doors off of cosmology? We're seeing right to the cusp of the Big Bang right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing galaxies that are forming only a few 100 million years after what we predict to be the beginning of the entire universe, destroying all the models of cosmology. It's all in the garbage can right now. We see completely formed galaxies with their own big ass black holes. Not to mention these little red dots that we can't even really explain. All thanks to this one telescope that's at the Lagrange place between the Earth and the sun. And imagine a dish that was a quarter mile across, built into a crater on the moon.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would, sheesh.
We would literally see to the edge of whatever. And that's just the beginning of science.
Yeah.
And then how the hell are you going to build a colony on another world, which is 100, 200 million miles away, when you could do the same thing on the moon 5 days away and learn as you go? So I call total bullshit on Mars. This is my little rant here on your podcast.
No, I love hearing it, man. It seems like I doubt that the first missions would be like, oh, you're going to go to Mars to establish a colony.
No. We just need to be able to pull it off, right?
Yeah, like the Ares missions in The Martian, they're there for like a month, and then they come back, and that's going to be what the first missions are,
right?
But permanent settlement on the moon is just not too far-fetched. That's something and
it's something we should do, because this idea of nuclear Armageddon is still among us, right? We could have a planetary disaster tomorrow. There's all these asteroids and comets that are hauling ass really close by, and we're surprised when we see one. And some of them are not necessarily planet killers, but it could kill 100 million people. So I don't know. I just think for the survival benefit of our species, we should moon it up.
Yeah. I'm all for moon travel.
Yeah.
Not just because I want to go, but
Well, here's another quick comment. Being the old Eric Cartman here, you're a self-identified millennial, right? And
I don't even know what generation is what.
What generation? Yeah.
I was born in 1997.
Oh, so okay. So let's do the math. You're 28. You're not even cracking 30.
Yeah, I turned 28 in the month.
You're a Zoomer. You're a Gen Z. You're not even a millennial. You're a Zoomer. See, this is even better now. So you're relatively young for someone leaping into being an author, and you bring all the Zoomer sensibility to it, which is exciting. And also you're a go-getter. So a lot of people are talking about how young dudes are being left behind by the younger women.
Uh-huh.
And you seem to be going for it.
Yeah, I mean, not everything's going to work, but you're not going to get anything if you don't go for it.
That's inspirational. It's cool. And it's also cool that you are under 30 and everything from the cover of your book to the Tarzan meets Space Jane theme to your focus on characters and a lot of your theme about just long time ago in a galaxy far, far away are throwbacks to classic science fiction.
Yeah.
In ways that are really fun to see coming to life.
Yeah, I don't know, I love that spirit. And you know what? If I was born in an earlier generation, maybe I wouldn't have embraced it like I do now. You couldn't access every, Asimov book, every Highland book so easily as you can now. You can't find every Star Trek episode right there to watch. So
on demand.
I'm very happy with the era that I was born in and the accessibility.
That is cool. I wrote a sci-fi book too, and it came out this June. And most of the characters and all the principal ones are like you, age 28 to 30, Zoomers. And I try to highlight the tension even between the generations and the sexes.
Are they earthbound?
Yeah, they're earthbound. It's a multiverse book. Eventually they haul ass into the multiverse. But the first two books, including this one, is set here on Earth. There's some cross-cutting to foreshadowings in the multiverse. But yeah, it's here. And I deal with all the issues of the generation gap, the gender wars and crisis as I see it as this old Eric Cartman looking at the Zoomers duke it out. Do you feel some of that tension? Is that part of your exploration, like hitting the road, feeling a nomad, trying to figure out what you want to do with your life?
Yeah, it's whenever I travel somewhere and it's like, where are you from? New York. Oh, you're an American. Well, what do you think of Trump? It's like that's always the go-to question. And I just don't feel as much, if you just go to some small Vietnamese village, obviously that tension's not going to be there. People have, they have families to focus on. They have real things. Like, there's a beauty in small communities. And I think that, we're just getting so wrapped up in these artificial ones that, just love. If the guy who you're arguing with on the internet, I bet if you talk to him in person, like, you'd actually get along. We have differences not to hate each other, but so that way, we can build new ideas off of that. As far as the boomer fight, what is like how the boomer generation is looking at the younger kids? Is that
the boomer generation tends to think that you guys are spoiled and oftentimes elitist and privileged. That's been the rap for a while now. And the millennials, I think, got the blunt of this. And I think it has a lot to do with having boomer parents who spoiled them and created the world that they grew into. And there's a new meme floating around where don't blame us for doing what we do. It's your fault, namely boomer Gen X, that you created this mess of a world that we now need to deal with. Like, we can't afford a house. There's no guarantee we can get a job. AI is now going to take everything away from us anyway. And it's all your fault.
Yeah, I don't think the blame game is going to help anyone. New generation blaming the older ones. This generation, we are spoiled and we have it good, but so did the boomers especially them compared to their parents.
Great point. Bang on point.
They had great compared to their parents. And just, why do we have to keep pointing fingers when we can, we could work together?
And that seems to be the spirit of your Pollyanna, science fiction, retro, Tarzan meets Jane, Frontier One debut novel, which is you're very hopeful and optimistic.
People are good. The universe is an amazing place, and it can be a wonderful place. And the universe is just too big for us to it's too big and strange for us to have these conflicts, and we need to love each other to kind of make sense of it all, to make worth of it all.
That's an awesome sentiment. And what does awesome look like for you and your aspiring careers? This is your debut novel. You mentioned that you're working on your next book. Do you see yourself in an idealized construct? Like, I play off the theme of the multiverse where everything possible is real somewhere. So do you want to make the multiverse Robert Reif real here of ... Do you want to be an entrenched science fiction novelist? Do you want to branch out back into film because you started out as a filmmaker? What does awesome sauce look like for you?
I would love to go back into movies, and I like this setting of these stories, of this frontier one, of the 12 worlds, just because it's like, this contained star system, there's a variety of planets, there's different, you can go forward, you can go back. So the next one I'm working on is, all different characters, but it's kind of the same setting of the 12 worlds, but different planets, and it definitely more so reflects kind of things that I see happening in this day and age, like international relationships turn interplanetary. There's like this one planet that claims a dwarf planet to be theirs, like Taiwan and China. There's just generations of people living in like VR headsets, completely unaware that like they live on a colony planet, and think that that's like where people
You have a
from.
lot going on in this one system.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this one system, on this one planet. So
Cool. It also reminds me a little bit of when we were first, again, when I was little Eric Cartman, there was a belief that we were unique, that most stars did not have planets. And as we found, it looks like every damn star has a planetary system, it looks like. They seem to be a natural consequence of stellar formation. So you've got 100 billion plus stars that we know of, and with that 100 billion stellar systems. And then we started finding a bunch of them using new techniques and technologies with, the dimming of the star when they went in front, the wobble of the star. So we indirectly measure these planets, but it seems to be pretty conclusive. And I remember that one of the first one was the TRAPPIST system.
yeah,
And the TRAPPIST system had like a half dozen predicted solid Earth-like planets, of which most of them were in the habitable zone, like could support water. And that's wild to think about. And it matches your vision of this complex, singular system with all of this stuff going on.
Yeah, I feel like there are plenty of, fantasy stories that take place in just, you got Middle Earth, you have Westeros. It's just one planet, so you can 12 planets. That's more than enough for me.
You got a whole series there, and it also simplifies a lot of the mess that, again, science fiction can get itself into, where the palette is too broad. You've got writers where the characters are zipping all over the galaxy, and then you have, as a reader, you're like, where the hell are we now, and who is leading the story? And it seems to me like you've got Tarzan and Space Jane pretty much driving the story as its through line.
Yeah, she's like, I think of her like she's like Sally Ride meets Tarzan.
That's perfect. So in the podcast description, we'll have the link to your website and any other resources you want to share with the listeners and viewers so they can get your book.
Yeah, I'd love to share the Amazon link, because for November 18th to 20th, it's free on Kindle.
Great. So you're doing the Kindle Unlimited for 18th through, which is today, through for another week or so. And if you're listening or watching after this, don't hesitate to check out Robert's stuff and link to your website too. Check it out. Get a little backgrounder on you and the story.
Yeah, I got my Instagram, @Roberto Reif.
All right, we can put that up there too. Get some traffic.
Yeah, my website has a lot of the older movies that I've made, and current day works.
I saw those on YouTube. Yeah, and you had real actors and characters and setups, and so you're a zoomer, but you're not sitting around in your mom's basement playing video games. You're
I
doing
have.
stuff.
I have done that.
You're out there doing it, and as part of your doing it, you've written your debut science fiction novel. So more power to you. And
Yeah.
we wish you well, and we can follow up in a few months or a year, see how it's cooking. And when your next one comes out, we can have you back in the factory
Yeah, that's awesome.
talking about the making of.
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me, Mookie. This has been awesome talking with you about Star Trek, space, and
these little pods are great, especially for the fans listening and watching. We're living and breathing science fiction, and this inside sports is a great opportunity for people to just listen to like-minded folks and then also to leap in. So like, comment, share, folks. Welcome to the Science Fiction Fantasy Factory. We've had Robert Reif, the author of Frontier 1. Good luck, Robert. Woohoo! Another shameless and bold product placement. Frontier 1. Buy it today on Amazon. Thanks,
or get
folks.
it for free today.
And get it for free today on Kindle. Get your ebooks out, fire up the Kindle, and read about Tarzan and Sally Ride Space Jane.